Okay, so by my time I make it 2 o'clock, so I'd like to start the webinar. So if I could introduce, ask Dave and Rich to start their videos, that'd be brilliant. Okay, so welcome everybody to our webinar on resilience. My name's Jennifer. I'm the Managing Director of a company called ISO Quality Services, and we're bringing you this webinar in conjunction with an organisation called ZENTA. We're going to get straight into it, so I'm going to hand straight over to Rich and Dave from ZENTA, and they will be guiding you through this hour's webinar now. So over to you guys.
Thanks, Jen. Welcome everybody to what we call bounce back ability versus mental toughness, a webinar on resilience. What do you do when the going gets tough? There's a song in that somewhere, Rich, but don't start singing it, please. It's a topic we've been asked to do a lot of work on over the last few weeks in lockdown. A lot of our customers have been asking about it. A lot of our networking groups have been asking about it. So resilience, it's not just about surviving. It's about actually moving towards thriving, and hopefully we'll show you about how that works today. So, Rich, would you like to just click onto our learning outcomes and objectives for this session, please? So we have 4 sort of things we want you to try and gain from today, if possible. The first one is around resilience. What does that term actually mean, and why is it so important for you, and if you lead a team, for your team? The second outcome we're after is around how do we know what the signs of being resilient are? How do we know if we are resilient? What are we looking for? The third one, and this is particularly important, is the mindset. The mindset that lies behind healthy resilience, because if you can get that bit right, that's the key. And then the final thing here is around what are the approaches to managing resilience for myself and for my team. And we'll try and give you some practical solutions and practical examples and models today that you can use. So throughout this webinar, we're going to get you involved with some polls, some straw polls. Please go with your gut feel on these answers. So Jen will open the polls for about 30 to 45 seconds. Go with your gut feel, and we'll just see what everybody thinks and says. So Jen, would you like to launch the first poll, please?
Hopefully that's come up for everybody. If we could just have some people, if everybody wants to pick their answer. Has that come up for you, Dave?
Yeah, we can see the poll questions. Lovely, thank you.
Fab. There we go.
So we should any minute now get some answers.
Yep, I can see them coming through. So just another 10 seconds or so, and then I will end the poll. Okay. Right, so I'll just share the results now.
Okay, so the most popular answer, be focused, think about your well-being when time allows. An interesting one, when time allows. Do we allow ourselves enough time to be resilient? Let's discuss that as we go along, Rich. So we're going to kick this off now by Rich telling you a little story. Rich.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story about a carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. Well, actually, to be more precise, about a number of carrots, a number of eggs, and a number of coffee beans. So a young woman went to her mother because life was getting very hard and tough, and she didn't know how she was going to make it. She seemed to have one problem after another. So her mother took her into the kitchen, and she took 3 saucepans out of the cupboard, filled each of them with water, put them on a high heat on the stove, and waited until the water boiled. Then she added some carrots into one of the saucepans, some eggs into another, and some coffee beans into the final one. After about 20 minutes, she turned off the heat, spooned out the contents into separate bowls, and said to her daughter, "So what do you see?" And the daughter said, "Carrots, eggs, and coffee." So the mother said, "Well, look closer." She said, "Feel the carrots. and the daughter noticed that the carrots were soft. The mother then got her daughter to break the eggs and peel the shell, and they were hard boiled. Then she got her to sip the coffee and taste the rich aroma. So what does this mean? Her daughter asked. So the mother replied, well, actually each object experienced the same adversity. In other words, the boiling water. So the carrots, they went in hard and strong and unrelenting, and they became soft and weak. The eggs, they've been fragile, but it had this thin shell protecting the liquid soft interior, but the inside had become hardened. However, the coffee beans, they were unique because they had changed the water. So just think about that story for a minute, and just think about when adversity strikes, when change hits, when stuff happens, which are you? Are you like the carrots that appear strong, have this bravado, sort of tough it out mentality, no yielding, but you end up weak, worn down and broken? Or maybe you might be like the eggs that start with a soft, malleable heart, but with each successive hardship allows its inside to harden and become bitter and closed. The coffee beans were different. They didn't fight, they didn't resist, they didn't close down. The very circumstances that brought the pain also brought the aroma and flavour. So as situations get worse, are you open to what you can change in yourself and your circumstances? So if you like, the moral or the moral of this story or this parable is that the most happy and most successful people and leaders and managers don't have the best of everything, but they make the best of themselves and their situation. They're open to possibilities, don't close themselves off, don't resist, and certainly don't push down their feelings. And we're going to be exploring that a little bit more as we go through this seminar. If you'd like to encompass the moral of this story into one sentence, it's about having the courage to be vulnerable. So we're going to explore that concept a little bit more as we explore Zentano's definition of what it means to be resilient and what a resilient person looks like. So I'm going to hand over now to Dave just to go on to the next section.
Thank you, Rich. We're going to give you a little model here, what we call it our resilience compass, and it's based on our connected leadership model, our model of what a modern leader should look like. If you want to find out more about that, it's available on our website. So this resilience compass, and Rich will bring the slide up now, has got 5 key points to it. The 4 obvious ones plus one right in the middle, okay? So basically, we're talking about here your wisdom, which is about your sort of sense of purpose and your goal setting. We have your strengths, which is about your experience and your knowledge and your skills and how you use those. We have your connections, is about relationships and how compassionate and empathetic you are, not just to other people, but to yourself. And balancing that, we have your habits. Habits drive productivity. So it's about things like understanding triggers, routines, and motivations. And if you can concentrate on these 4 parts of your compass, the wisdom being your north, if you like, your true north, you always come back to where you started, true north. Making all that happen, the engine room in the middle, is about what we call your courage, i.e. having a flexible, adaptive mindset. And that's really key to this. So that's where you actually understand that fears are normal and you accept those fears and you learn how to deal with them. So Rich will go a bit deeper now and bring this alive a bit more. Rich.
Okay, so let's take those 4 cardinal points of this compass and just go a little bit deeper into these. So let's have a look at wisdom. So, you know, if you're a resilient person that uses your wisdom, what are the sort of things that you would see? Well, you would be a person that keeps focusing on your why. You have a sort of well-articulated, well-understood sense of purpose. And related to that, what you would do is set realistic and smart goals to achieve that sense of purpose. Also importantly, actually you would take small steps to achieve that. So you wouldn't overstretch yourself, and you would break stuff down into smaller chunks and then celebrate those small steps. You'd also have an attitude of gratitude and appreciation. And underpinning all of this is you'd have your behaviour would be value driven. Sort of grounding that, if you like, and bringing that to life and making sure actually you achieve your goals and you achieve your purpose. It's about using your strengths in a proactive way. So it's about being proactive, focusing on the challenges that you've got, not being the victim to your circumstance, learning from your failure, and then seeking the opportunities to use those strengths. So you see that this resilience compass is one way of managing the tension between these different aspects of what resilience is about. Then on the other two cardinal points, we talk about connections, and this sort of has a twofold aspect to it, really. It's important about being kind to yourself, being compassionate to yourself, being open to what your thoughts and feelings, etc., are telling you, and also by understanding and being compassionate to yourself, and then you're able to show kindness and compassion to others, and then you develop healthy relationship with your emotions, and also healthy relationship with other people, and importantly, continue to connect with others around you. This is balanced by actually making sure that you have the right habits and disciplines in place. So the sort of habits that would focus on the whole body, where you look after the whole of yourself, you build in appropriate recovery and recharge time, have routine and structure and discipline in place. And also have what we call watertight time zones. In other words, you're not multitasking, flipping around every which way. You have you're very focused in terms of how you manage your time. And then right in the center of this is really about having the courage to be vulnerable and showing up, and really understanding what your fears are telling you, being in touch with those fears, and being able to explore what's rational and what's irrational, and using that in response to what's going on around you. So what is the pathway to resilience? How do we get there? So we're just going to explore a little bit, the relationship with ourselves to our environment and what's going on around us. So in our environment, we have stuff that's happening to us. There's change and adversity and all that sort of stuff that happens to us. Some of that change we choose, like, for example, a new relationship, new home, new job. And some of the change we don't choose. That could be a sports injury, COVID-19, lockdown, the B word, Brexit, which we haven't heard much about recently, and redundancy, for example. Some examples of change that we don't choose. Resilient people know how to respond to those things in a healthy way. So the response is really important, and it's where you focus your emotional energy is what determines how resilient you are as a person. So we've got a little diagram here, which we call a diagram of circle of influence and circle of concern. And a resilient person, no matter what's going on around them, won't waste their time on stuff they can't influence or control. They will focus their time and their effort and their emotional energy, which, to be fair, in all of us we have limited sort of capacity. They focus on the stuff where it's worth expending your effort, on stuff that you can control and stuff that you can influence. Okay, so that's, if you like, that sets a bit of the context now for the rest of the webinar, where we're going to be walking around that resilience compass and just exploring each of those points, and in particular, the courage mindset in the middle. So Dave, over to you.
Thank you, Rich. It's worth saying at this point, we have a self-assessment checklist for you. If you want that as a reflective tool, it's got a few questions on it for you to answer. please get in touch with myself or Rich. Our email addresses will appear at the end of these slides. We're more than happy to send you that as a complementary tool to use. So Rich said that at the center of our model is your courage. It's about your flexible, adaptive mindset, which actually means, as you can see from our cartoon, you've got to get out your comfort zone. Yeah, you've got to walk across that valley of fear and get into the courage zone to get where you need to get to. And you need to be proactive about that. The more proactive you can be, the better. So Jen, I think it's time for another poll. See what people think about this.
Absolutely, no problem. So please feel free to use the chat and or the question and answer function as well throughout today. We'll come to the questions all at the end, and we'll make sure we cover everything. So if they come to you as the guys are talking, please feel free to just pop your questions in the chat or the Q&A. Right, we've got some results coming through here, so I'm going to keep it open for another 15 seconds or so. Okay, last couple of seconds to vote. I think we've more or less got everybody that has voted, so that's great. Okay, and I will share those results now.
Okay, oh, so we have a joint first place here. So I worry I lack the ability to make things happen. So some confidence related issues there, very, very common when it comes to change. And I worry how I will manage if I don't feel I'm in control. Again, extremely understandable because human beings like to feel like they're in control. All of these fears, all of these worries are perfectly natural. We'll cover that a bit later on. So, shall we explain a little bit, Rich, about how mindsets work?
Yeah, come on, Dave. I think this is your bit.
It certainly is. So, Rich and I have produced what's called the ZENTA mindset model. And if you imagine how we work, we don't live in a bubble, we live in an environment. And that environment will send us every day, every minute of every day, sensory information, which we absorb through our 5 senses, unless you're Bruce Willis or Rich and you've got a 6th sense. And in that mindset, the place where that information goes is what we call our operating system. Okay, now inside your operating system are stored memories and all the emotions that are attached to those memories, but also in there will be things like stories and narratives. There'll be beliefs, there'll be your values, your life values and principles system. It's a variety of information, and those things you filter the sensory information with. So your operating system will be different to anybody else's because you have a unique operating system. And it's why we can all observe exactly the same thing, but have a slightly different take on it because our operating systems are slightly different. And it's these filters which are really important in terms of understanding them and understand how they impact either positively or negatively on your resilience.
It's a bit like the 3D glasses you wear in a cinema. You're not aware that you're wearing them, but the whole way you see the world is being filtered by this operating system. So also in your mindset is a thing Rich and I call you the hothead. You're a hothead. It's the unaware, subconscious, if you like, emotionally driven part of you where most of your decisions are made, whether you realize it or not. Okay, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Your hothead is the sort of thing that says to you when you're in danger, I think I need to get away from here. So it can serve you really well in certain circumstances, but it's also driven by these filters. It's also the thing that actually can get you in trouble if it starts misbehaving. So understanding the fears, therefore, is really important and what those feelings and emotions are telling you. And as Rich flashed up, there is another part to the mindset, which is the cool head. And this works slightly differently. This is the more aware, logical, rational part of your mindset, which is really key to kick into place if you want to be resilient. Now, both the cool head and the hot head have access to the operating system, all the information in there. So it's about how you use these 3 things either in unison to work for you, or if they don't, they'll work against you. And that's the essence really of what emotional intelligence is all about. So Rich, if you want to click through. So there's 3 aspects here that are really key as far as having this adaptive, flexible mindset that we're asking people to sort of focus on. The first one is, do we believe, Rich can flash it up, that you can change?
because actually fixed mindsets where we don't believe we can change, we don't believe we can do anything about the situations we're in, actually is not going to serve you very well and actually will cause you problems. So first of all, do you believe you can change? And if not, why not? The second thing is about curiosity and open-mindedness. Be really curious about what is going on inside your head, even if it appears to be negative stuff. Ask yourself questions about what's going on inside your head. Try to explore and find out deeper answers, because that is a route to resilience. And the final thing is what I would call the greatest gift you can give anybody: self-awareness. Self-awareness and how well you understand yourself and self-manage is really important. Allied to that is how well you understand others and how you build relationships with others. And again, this third element, if you put these three things together, is the route into having this adaptive, flexible mindset that will really drive your resilience in the right direction. So this proactive mindset we're after it is really important in times of change. And Rich is going to put up an example now of how we operate in periods of change, something we call the change curve. It's got 3 phases or 3 stages to it. And there's time down on one axis and your motivation and performance on the other. What you'll notice is at the beginning of this, in stage 1, we tend to often be in denial. Yeah. Oh, well, this change won't affect me. It's not going to impact me that much. Very soon we work out that it will. Very soon we go into realization, sometimes shock, sometimes confusion. Oh, this is actually happening and it's going to impact me, but I don't really know how it's going to impact me. And that can then drive the hot head and all the stories and narratives and beliefs and cause things like resistance and anger and frustration. We may even blame other people or blame things, and we may get defensive about stuff. And if we don't process that, and we don't understand it, and we don't do something with it, it will serve against us, it will work against us. So what we need to do is work to this point of letting go. And that's the end of stage 1, where we can actually, we accept it, we understand that it's there, but we let go of it and do something different. And that's where we start to move into stage 2, a transition phase, where it's still likely that you'll have anxiety and fear and frustration, but you'll be searching for answers. You'll be working with the uncertainty and trying to find your way through to the point next in this where you get optimism about the future and moving forward. You have some ideas you can tap into, and you start to understand yourself and the environment around you, and can begin to adapt. Ultimately, you want to get into stage 3, which is acceptance, commitment, enthusiasm, and trusting that you can move forward. There's a couple of points to make about this. Your fears will manifest during this time in behaviours. Those behaviours may not actually be helpful to you. Leaders, because they tend to have a bit more control when change is going on, are often ahead of their teams. So it might be that you have a leader who's already in stage 3 and he thinks that his team or her team is with them, that actually the team's still in stage 1 or stage 2. And that obviously is something that needs managing. The other thing can happen here is that we can be in stage 3 and something happens and we can very easily slip back into stage 2 or even slip back into stage 1. So don't think just because, oh, I think I'm at stage 3 with COVID-19, you aren't going to slip back at some point. It could easily happen.
The other thing I'd just say on top of that, Dave, would be, you know, if you're a manager managing people through change and you're in charge of the change, in control of the change, you know, you're often ahead of the curve, the change curve, than your team, as Dave has just said. But if you've got a team where they're still in stage 1 and you're in stage 3, often your approach to managing those people can be from your own perspective. So you need to climb into the shoes of the other people and be supportive and help them get through that stage 1 to the letting go stage, where they can go through to stages 2 and 3. So it's a really useful model to think about how you manage people through change and how you personally respond to change as well.
So we talked a lot about fears here. Richard's going to actually bring this alive a little bit more. We call it the scary monster.
Yeah.
So like our young children have scary monsters under their beds when they're young, well, we have scary monsters inside us when we're going through change. So Rich.
Yeah. So I'm going to just talk a little bit now about developing that healthy relationship with your emotions and your fears and the stuff that's going on inside you. If you remember back to the story about the carrot and the eggs, it's very, very often we instinctively want to push away the fears that we have. And the danger with that happening, it's a bit like mole thwacking, you know, if you keep pushing things down, they're going to pop up in another place, but in a different form, you know, and that can usually be in the form of illness or stress or whatever, because we're not processing our emotional stuff properly. So being in touch with these scary monsters is really important. And actually, when you start to look a little bit deeper, the monster is not that scary. You know, they are fears, but they're telling us something that might be really important to listen to. So it's important to show up and not have this attitude where you think you just need to tough it out. You know, be in touch with what's going on internally inside you. You know, there's a lot talked about in terms of men's mental health at the moment, and you know, there's been, you know, I don't know what the UK sort of, you know, British male thing to do, where we push away our feels and don't talk about them. But it's very important to be in touch with those things and not to just tough it out, and be open to what your fears say, and also be self-compassionate. And what I mean by that is I was coaching somebody the other day, and they were saying to me, well, I shouldn't be feeling like this. And I said, well, it's, you know, it's, you know, they weren't being kind to themselves. It's perfectly natural to have fears in response to stuff and shit that happens around us. Okay, so it's really important to have this healthy relationship with our fears. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to have a look at how those fears might show themselves up, and what we call the 4 stories and the 4 fears. So what we're trying to do here is to be in touch with what our fears are really telling us, and to strip away the irrational stuff, and to really connect with what's actually happening. And the 4 fears are divided into two categories: fears about self and fears about our environment. So one type of fear could be around our sense of self-worth. Am I competent or good enough to do this in this particular situation? You know, given this thing that's happened to me, am I good enough or competent enough to do this? You might be asking yourself, so what if I fail? You know, and yeah, perhaps you might have catastrophe type thoughts around failure. Or perhaps, you know, you're really worried about what you're going to lose, that sense of security, which is so important to us as human beings. You know, what you're going to lose as a result of this situation or this change. Or perhaps you might be afraid of losing control. You know, how am I going to manage? You know, because stuff is happening to me that I can't manage. So the really important thing, the really important thing I want you to take away from this seminar is actually to engage the hot head and the cool head in an emotionally intelligent way, and to really connect with actually what is going on. So your hot head could be telling you all sorts of stuff, some of which might be true, some of which might not be true. The important thing is that you engage the cool head and really ask the question, what do I know? What's really going on with me right now? Is the thoughts and feelings I'm having rational and logical? What's my gut instinct really telling me? So let me give you for instance, a very simple example. You've got a presentation coming up that you're very nervous about. And it's perfectly natural to be nervous about giving a presentation. Just before this webinar, for example, I was a little bit anxious, you know, which is quite normal when we're presenting stuff to human beings, because we're a bit worried about what they might want to say. But what might happen is some of those fears that we talked about earlier, they might kick in and be irrational and be telling you stuff that's not helpful. But your fears might be telling you stuff that's also helpful. So for example, your fear might be telling you, have I actually prepared enough? You know, so you know, so it's really important to really understand what's really going on, and what is your fear really telling you. Am I layering some irrational stuff on top of this? And I like to call this irrational stuff the Buddhist second arrow. So this is a concept that's sort of the Buddhist tradition sort of developed, which imagine you know, take yourself back 2,000 years, and you know you're in the Far East, in the middle of a war situation, and you suddenly get an arrow in the arm. And the natural human instinctive response is to think, "Oh shit, I'm going to die." Yeah. But the Buddhist second arrow is that very thing. Is we tell ourselves, actually we're going to die, when actually, if you just strip away the irrational stuff, we've just got an arrow in the arm. Okay, so it's going to hurt, you're going to scream, it's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be unpleasant, you're going to suffer, but you're unlikely to die. And the second arrow is the irrational stuff that we layer over the top of what's really going on, the catastrophizing type stuff related to those 4 fears. You know, so it's really important in terms of we understand that actually that our response is filtered by that interpretation. So really understanding what's going on, and you know, making some choice around that interpretation, understanding that you can reframe and choose a different story. Okay, so Dave.
Yeah, so true north on our leadership, on our resilience compass here is what we call your wisdom. What essentially this is about your sense of purpose and sense of direction. So who you see yourself as a person, what your cause and passion in life is all about, and how you're going to get there. If you've read Start With Why by Simon Sinek, where he says basically people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And it's really, really true. So have you got a strong sense of purpose? Because in times of crisis, that's really, really important. So we're just going to launch a poll on this. So Jen, if you've got the next poll ready, please.
Yep. Okay, that should have gone out now.
This poll's all about goal setting.
Yep, starting to get some results through now, so we'll just give it another 15 seconds or so. Okay, so I'm just going to end the poll now, and then I will share the results. There we go. Oh, you're on mute, Dave.
Beg your pardon. So we have a clear winner on this one. Yeah. Thank you, Jen. Yeah, okay, so a lot of you do set goals out there in all aspects of your life, which is really, really good, because I think goal setting is a really important practical route to making your purpose and direction come alive. So Rich, if you want to put the next slide up for us. Rich and I often in our coaching and leadership development conversations, we talk about macro and micro goal setting. So at the macro level, sort of step one here is, do you have a long-term vision for yourself? Do you have a long-term vision for your business? Do you have aspirations, which might not be fully fleshed out in terms of being very definitive, but do you have those long-term aspirations and goals? It's great to have those, to know where you're going at some point in the distant future. But most of us don't really focus past about the next 3 months. So actually having some priorities to work towards in the next 3 months is really important. It's certainly how a lot of businesses now plan their growth. It's certainly what we do around planning our business, but also aspects of our private lives as well. So what are those priorities? Don't have too many. The more priorities you have, the less you're likely to achieve the stuff you want to achieve. So what's really important? Once you've got the really important things in your mind, set monthly goals and be here as specific as you can be. What is it I want to achieve in the next month? Yeah, it's got to be measurable. It's got to be specific. Okay. Yeah, by all means, challenge yourself, as long as you don't over challenge yourself. And that's where your strengths really come in. And then obviously from a day-to-day basis, set yourself daily tasks, that small chunk mentality that Rich was talking about. Set those small chunks. And you, by tapping into your purpose and using these goals to achieve it, that is a key habit in being resilient. So Rich, did you want to sort of add a little bit to this?
Yeah, there's just a little bit to add really. So this is a bit of a photo that sort of does my head in a bit when I look at it. So you know, being a father, having had sort of young children, they're grown up now, but yeah. Anyway, but it's really important that we take small steps. So it's fine to have the aspirational visions and strategy and planning and that sort of stuff. But taking small steps, breaking that down into small steps that you take each and every day, and then celebrating your success around taking those small steps is one of the keys to building resilience in you. Because if you try to take too big a step and overstretch yourself, that can be very demoralizing, very, very demoralizing. So taking small steps and breaking stuff down is really, really important in terms of developing resilience in you and in your team. So this is a good way in terms of managing a team and managing a business, because it helps people feel a sense of achievement and sense of success. So Dave.
Okay, so let's move on to the stuff that balances out our sense of purpose, which is about your experience and your skills and your knowledge. Yeah, and having that proactive I can mentality is really important here. Doing the heavy lifting, doing the practice, doing all the stuff you need to do to get good at stuff in the first place. But basically trying to unleash the superhero that you all have inside of it. We all have inside of us. And that is where your sense of direction and purpose will be achieved. Yeah. So a positive and proactive focus, if you like, that makes stuff happen. So Jen, I think we have another poll coming up.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so yeah, launching now. Took me by surprise there, Dave. I wasn't expecting one so soon.
We're moving through at a pace now, Jen.
Okay, yeah, we're starting to get some answers come through. So I'm going to leave this on for 45 seconds again, as we have with the others. So another 10 seconds or so. Okay, so I'll stop that there and then I'll share the result.
Oh, so quite an even spread here on these. The one that's got the highest score, I believe I have the experience, knowledge and skills to get good outcomes in life. So you believe you have, does it mean it actually happens? There's a lot of people here who lack confidence. That's very, very common. But also there's some people who have a very strong sense of purpose and believe they have the capability to make it happen. So a whole range of answers, which is interesting. So Rich, do you want to just expand on this a little bit more and talk about how strengths and the mindset around strengths is really important?
Yeah, so we're just going to explore a little bit now about the difference between what it means to be a proactive versus a reactive person. So I am presenting this in sort of very black and white terms, and you know we might flip-flop between these two sort of mindsets, if you like. But you know, have a think about where your natural center of gravity might be in terms of your mindset. So a reactive person will create reasons for not creating results. In other words, they make excuses. Whereas a proactive person, they're all about making stuff happen and creating results. Notice the subtle but important difference between the two. So a reactive person could have these traits that you might notice in them, sort of a victim type mentality, blaming themselves, other people, their situation for stuff that they can't do, maybe an inflexible attitude, because oh, well, I can't do this because it's just too difficult, and maybe they're just unthinking and just go through life on autopilot without really thinking about what they can do to change their situation. In contrast, a proactive person you would see these sorts of traits coming up, where they're being assertive, they're taking responsibility for their stuff, they've got a solutions-focused approach, they don't just see problems, they're adaptive, and they choose. And this last bit about choosing is so important. Because this idea of choice is about what we call your locus of control. And the locus of control, there are two types of locus of control, our internal and external locus of control. And what we mean by that is how much control you believe you have over stuff and events that's happening to you? Do you believe that you can make things happen? Do you believe that you have agency? So a person with an external locus of control will be reactive. They think things happen to them. And this will be the sort of internal talk, internal chatter that would typify what's going on inside their head. Why does everything happen to me? Why bother? I allow my failings to impact my confidence. There's nothing I can do about my future. So, you know, they'd be very focused on their failings, on their weaknesses, etc. Whereas in contrast to that, a proactive person, you make things happen despite the circumstances. You know, you take responsibility. You say, look what I can do. Use your strengths to make things happen. And you determine your future. Not everything is inside of our control. So this is not like a pie in the sky sort of, you know, you can achieve anything in life. But it's about where your center of gravity is in terms of what you believe you can do, taking responsibility for the stuff that you can influence and control. So, you know, that I believe that this sort of mindset is so important for being resilient and tracking your way through life's difficulties and life's sufferings and life's challenges. So Dave, over to you on connections.
On that last point as well, sorry, on that last point, Rich, I think it's important to say that human beings are very good at focusing on their failings. We don't often focus on what we're good at, and that's why we've actually said here, look, focus on your strengths, focus on what you're good at, because you will all be good at lots of stuff. It's important to recognize that and celebrate it as well. So yeah, connections. The human beings are programmed not to be lone wolves and lone individuals. We do actually need to be around other human beings. Some of us prefer our own company more than others, but actually at a biological level, we are programmed to live in groups. And when we're managing resilience, that means connecting with yourself first and foremost, but also connecting with other people and, you know, showing compassion and empathy, trying to stand in other people's shoes, as the diagram says there, sharing perspective, sharing ideas, and using our heart as well as our mind to connect with other human beings. So Jen, we have another poll coming up around connection.
Lovely, yep, ready for you this time. Okay, so that's just launched. So hopefully everybody's seeing that now. Yeah, so we got started to get some results through. Okay, so we'll leave that open for another 10 to 15 seconds. Fab. Okay, lovely. We'll just end that there and I will share the results with you.
Good. So we have lots of emotionally intelligent people in the room, which is great. Yeah, and quite a range of answers there.
Yeah, there is a range, isn't there?
I like the curious one myself. I think being curious and willing to explore things is really important in resilience. Any observations there, Rich, before we move on?
No, I would just, a couple of people have said connecting with emotions is not my thing, and I can relate to that. And hopefully we'll have a little tool to share with you at the end that might help you to sort of connect with some of that emotional stuff, which you might find naturally difficult because that's normal. Okay.
So if you click through, Rich, to our next slide, we're not going to say a huge amount about this, other than relationships are important not to hide away from.
So this is a photo of a recent ZENTA team meeting.
I think you might be being
sorry, Dave.
I think you might be.
Sorry, that's just made me laugh. That has. Not during this situation, I hope.
Can I just make a point here, Jen?
Dave on the left. Dave on the left, by the way, just in case you wondered. Sorry, Dave. You carry on. I'd like to make
a point here, Rich. We do not sit picking each other's nits when we have a team meeting. Okay,
well, not often,
but we do have each other's backs, and I think one of the things we've done in the lockdown period particularly is made extra effort with the ZENTA team and even with our associates to spend plenty of time connecting and talking and understanding how people are feeling and helping out if they need some help, either with workload or just talking things through and listening. Really, really important thing to do. But certainly what you shouldn't do is hide away. So yeah, have people's backs, but also spend time connecting with yourself. And we'll talk about a little bit later on how to do that. But remember, we are programmed to be social animals, and it's really important. Right, next slide, please, Rich. And if we're coming to the last part of our resilience compass, which is all about habits. Now, as you can see from the diagram there, very simple diagram of how habits work. There's be a trigger to our habits. So let's take brushing our teeth. It might be bedtime is the trigger. We go upstairs and wherever we go and we brush our teeth, and the reward might be that nice fresh feeling in your mouth after you've brushed your teeth, which means you go to bed without the tastes of the day in your mouth. Okay, very simple habit. We learn to do it when we're quite young, and we just don't think it. It's autopilot. We just do it, or most of us just do it anyway. Yeah, and all habits work the same way. So the question I have here is, have you got the right habits and disciplines and routines in place to drive your resilience? Because it's the most fundamentally important thing, is to have habits in place. Rich, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, so just the one little thing I would say, that there's a high correlation between resilient people and productivity. So resilient people tend to be productive, and we're going to see a little video in a minute that demonstrates exactly that point.
So before we have the video, Jen, we have I think it's the final poll of the day, poll 6.
Yep. Okie doke. Go. That should all be being received now. When you tell me you're having your leadership meetings, I'm never going to look at it the same way again.
No. I'm not sure I wanted that image in my head either. I think it was a bit of a mistake.
Perhaps we'll invite you to one, Jen.
You're okay. Right, so we'll leave that running for another 10 seconds or so. Oh, no, I think we've got everybody voted, actually. So, okay, I'll end that there and I will share the results. I'm getting quick on this, but voting now, the polling.
Very decisive, yeah, very decisive. Oh, and a clear winner. So lots of people making time to focus on habits that improve mind, body, and heart. By heart, we mean the emotional well-being. And I think actually that last point, that point C in this poll, is really, really critically important. Habits need to cover the whole person, yeah, the mind, the body, and the heart. So I think, Rich, we're going to launch into a little video, aren't we, now, before we...
Yeah, so this is just a little video which hopefully just pulls together some of the thoughts and goes back to the point I was making about resilient people are productive. And this is all about the good habits and the good mindset you put in place in terms of managing productivity.
The difference between being busy and being productive. Being busy involves frantic work, while being productive is more focused. Being busy prioritizes the short term, while productivity is all about long-term priorities. Being busy is about working harder, while being productive is about working smarter. When you're busy, you're fueled by perfectionism, but when you're productive, you're fueled by purpose. Being busy means being good at everything, while being productive is about being great at a few things. Busyness is all about multitasking and shallow work, while being productive is about sticking to a single task and engaging in deep work. Being busy is rushed, while being productive is relaxed. You can't always avoid being busy. Life happens. Sometimes the urgent crowds out the important. But when we focus on the things that matter, we are more likely to be productive rather than busy.
And I think therein lies the problem of modern life, Rich, is that most of us, and I have to say I'm just as guilty as anybody else, are often just too busy. Our life is so full of stuff that we can't see the wood for the trees.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Yeah. So, question I would ask you, are you a blue-ass fly? And, in terms of, this is just a quick summary of what that video was all about. Where are you on that spectrum of stuff? So it's just worth thinking about that. So we don't have time to focus too much on that now. I just want to go finally, just for a couple of minutes, to talk about the importance of whole body habits. You know, so it's important to put habits in place that address your body, mind, and your heart. You know, we're not brains on legs. That's a bit of a Western fallacy, which is slowly beginning to be in challenge now in our society, thankfully. So it's really important to think about the habits you put in place to support and manage your resilience in all of these areas. I'm just going to point now just to one habit that we highly recommend as a business. So when we coach people, when we take people through our leadership programs, this is the one thing that we ask them to put in place. And there's a high correlation between success in coaching, success in leadership, and this habit. And there's a impressive research evidence base out there, which shows a strong correlation between this habit and success and productivity. And surprise, surprise, it's journaling. We think journaling is really important because what journaling does, it helps you to get clarity and helps you to get stuff out of your head, for you to get focus on what is important in your life. But really importantly, it helps you to process stuff. And the research out there suggests that when we handwrite, and we recommend handwriting in journaling, when you handwrite, it engages the brain in a very different way and helps us to get the stuff out of our head onto paper that gets us out of that hamster wheel. I don't know whether you're the sort of person that, a bit like me, where I can have anxious thoughts and I go round and round my little hamster wheel. And I found journaling incredibly helpful to help me get clarity, focus, and to process that stuff, and also to recharge. And in ZENTA, we've been doing journaling now because we like to practice what we preach for 2 years now, and it's brought massive benefits to our business. I would recommend, there's a particular system that I would recommend for journaling. It's called bullet journaling. Go to bulletjournaling.com. There's a load of stuff about it on there. Go to our website. There are a load of blogs. I think there's one called Bob the Builder blog. Is it, Dave?
Yeah, why you shouldn't furlough Bob the Builder.
Yeah.
It's all about journaling.
Yeah. So that's all I'm going to say about that, really. And so comes the end of our presentation. Dave, do you just want to say just a few things to close off?
Yeah, if anybody on the webinar today is a leader, I just want to sort of bring it back to leadership. So I mentioned that we believe there's a new way to lead in the modern world. Rich and I, and our connected leadership model, which again is all on our website in detail, and there's the model, is really important. So leadership is about giving purpose and direction, having a strong sense of it for yourself and giving it to your team. You ground that in capabilities, so not just your own, but your team's. You connect with yourself, you connect with your teams, and you use that connection to drive productivity, focus and clarity as well. And driving it all is an adaptive mindset. It's really, really important, if we haven't stressed it enough, to have that adaptive mindset. So anybody who's a leader, please think about that in these really difficult times that we're going through. And Jen, I think that takes us up with time, about 7 or 8 minutes to go to questions and answers.
Lovely. Well, if anybody has any questions, if you could just pop them either in the chat or in the question and answer function on Zoom. We have had a request for you to reconfirm the point about the bullet point. I think it means the point about the bullet journal, website details, etc. So could you just kind of direct people, or maybe pop it in the chat, where they can go to get more information on that?
Yeah, just give me a sec. I'll just get the URL. I'll just double check what the URL is.
As a team here, we are a big fan of bullet journaling. It's something that I think I read in one of your blogs, Dave, about 6 months ago, and now I'm pretty sure about 50 to 60% of our team here adopted the bullet journal, and it's definitely a game changer for anybody who's always felt a little bit like they've got so much going on in their head and they need to get everything down. I use it as my kind of my daily task list, my monthly planner, everything, my shopping list, what I've got to do at home, what I've got to do at work. It really is great. Just have everything all in one place, as I was a nightmare for having journals all over the place, or notebooks all over the place with scribbles here and scribbles there. So
just put it in the chat, Jen, there is.
Brilliant. Okay, there we go. So there's the link there for you. So has anybody got any other questions for Dave and Rich while that we have them here? I don't think they do. Obviously, you covered everything so thoroughly. Well, if you have, just while I'm talking, feel free to add it in. But I just want to thank Dave and Rich. This is one of our kind of Wednesday webinars that we've been running, or kind of a line of webinars that we've been running on all different topics. And this was something that Dave and Rich put on for our own team, which they found really, really useful. So we thought it would be a good idea to kind of extend that out. We hope that you've taken something away. We hope that you've learned something. We hope that even if it's just, you know, reassured you on certain things about your resilience and about how you're coping, especially in the current situation. The recording will be made available, so in a couple of days, anybody that was registered onto this or anybody that joined us today will have access to that. But please do get in touch with Dave and or Rich from Zentano if you have any further questions, if you go away and have some reflections. We've had a question asking if we're able to share the slides. I don't know, Dave, Rich, I don't know if that's something we can do.
What we tend to do is we've amalgamated it into this checklist. So if people get in touch with myself, dave.morris@zentanogroup.com, or if they get in touch with you, Jen, and we'll get that out to anybody who wants it.
Great. So yeah, there's a checklist that you can request afterwards. So just let me know. I will be emailing everybody afterwards. So you can always reply to me, or Dave's email has now been popped in the chat as well. So we do have our next webinar running on the 9th of July. This one's a morning webinar. It's at 10 o'clock, and that one's on risk. Daring to Dare. So this one's being held in conjunction with an organisation called Risk Evolves. So for anybody that would be interested in attending that, I will also send the details out about that. So finally, it doesn't look like we have any questions. You've obviously done an absolutely thorough job, guys. So thank you very much. And yeah, it's been a really good session. So yeah.